Welcome to the Ponderosa Pine podcast. My guest today is Joseph Piccoli. He's the CEO of Guardian Medical Solutions LLC and a 501c3 GRIT, Growing Resilience Through Insight and Tenacity. Backed by 21 years of combat and civilian search and rescue experience as a U.S. Air Force Special Warfare Pararescueman, he embodies the warrior's ethos that others may live. Upon retirement, he pivoted directions from military medicine to training various federal agencies in tactical medicine. Now, once again, he's adapting and adjusting to what is needed. He's helping transitioning veterans deal with stress through the GRIT programs. Joseph is in the process of completing his master's in social work at St. Joseph's University, New York, with the intent to work with special warfare airmen, dealing with the traumas of the career field and of those transitioning to find a new tribe in the civilian world. Joseph visits his hometown of Albuquerque, New Mexico frequently to spend time with his mother. And since I'm in Albuquerque, I was lucky enough to get Joseph to stop by and sit down with me for a while. Let's take a look at what that conversation looked like. You grew up in Albuquerque?
Yep.
What was your childhood like?
I had what I would say a classic Gen X upbringing, and
so you were a latchkey kid. You were completely neglected.
No, I would say that.
I'm just kidding.
No, that's the typical, which is
my classic,
which is great, but like growing up, like we were talking about high school. I mean, just doing my 30-year reunion this past weekend.
Isn't that wild?
It is wild. It is very.
I made it to my 20 and my 30. I didn't do the 10. I completely blew by, but I don't think anybody's changed by 10, so I don't think it matters.
Both of them, I was deployed.
Oh,
so like that's where I was just kind of like.
So this is your first one.
This is technically my first one. Albuquerque was great, and I don't say this bad regarding the state or the city, but it was a war zone for looking back, like the stuff where I went to high school, and we had I went to drive-by shootings.
I went to a very violent middle school in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Like in Northeast Albuquerque. Mm-hmm. Like Albuquerque's a wild town.
Yeah, I can't. Well, when Cops is banned from the show, Cops is banned from filming here because they're like, all right, you guys are giving us a bad rap, even though your ratings are through the roof. And I wasn't even like, it made me appreciate a lot of things more because being, doing the deployments, doing the traveling and going different places, it made me kind of appreciate things. Yeah. And I was a latchkey kid on both ends, like off base and on base.
And, so you were a military brat?
Yeah, I was both mom and dad, retired military. Dad was a chief, Intel, first shirt. Mom was Master Sergeant OSI, so I didn't get away with shit.
Bet not.
I did not. So, my dad was a shirt over at the weapons lab, and so on base, same thing, glorious. Like just literally BMX bikes, just finding dirt, going wherever you wanted. Like you couldn't get in trouble because if you did, your parents found out, and that was just kind of the end of it right then and there.
Yeah, it's like a safety net too.
Yeah,
because there's so much to keep you out of real trouble.
Yeah, but I somehow found it. Like the dumbass that I was. Like I still tell stories of like we're having a snowball fight, and actually when it was like when they were SPs and driving around, little two-striper in his squad car going by, and my dumbass runs out with the freaking snowball, runs out, everybody stops what they're doing, goes to their sides, waits. My dumbass runs out with a snowball, freaking beans the freaking squad car, and he's like, gets out, woo, come here, kid. Which house is yours? All right, we're gonna go talk to the chief. So I had a steep learning curve. And then having mom as OSI, good but bad. Like when I went to the recruiter and told him, it's like I never did pot, and he's like, yeah, that's great, but how many times have you smoked pot? And I'm like, no, I've never done pot. And he's like, well, you can tell me, we got to find out. And I'm like, my dad was a chief and my mom was OSI. And he's like, no drugs used. So awesome. But it was good. It was even off base in town, a little bit more stupidity, but like a little bit more learning, greater learning curve. But I looking back, you do the typical, mom was tough and dad was hard and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, they had to be, because they were both working. They were both military, and
that's their job.
Yeah, that's. And now being a dad, being military, looking at it, I'm like, I'm glad and grateful that I was alive. Like, so, yeah, we didn't have Ring cameras, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have all that. We had, you better be here when the lights come on at nighttime, or
I mean,
if I find you, you better hide.
Didn't have cyberbullying or anxiety over unrealistic social media expectations.
Yeah, there was.
I feel
go do something, dig a hole, set fire to something, break something, go learn.
I spent a lot of time turning over rocks and looking for different creatures, you know, like centipedes, scorpions, snakes, lizards.
And they're I mean, you went to school out here too, so it's all out here. If you look hard enough, you'll find it. And you may not want to find it, because it bites.
Yes, a lot of it bites.
But yeah,
you learn.
It was great. Yeah, and that's what I think nowadays is where there is a lot, when you hit the nail, as far as like anxiety or depression. Or we had bullying, but we had bullying where the person was a bully and then you stood up. Whereas now you can't. It's all online. It's all this
you
other.
Can't fight back.
Yeah, you're like, okay, what are you gonna do? Send a text and a couple emojis? I'm like, whatever. No, I'm like, now I teach my kids. I'm like, hey, you're not allowed to start a fight, but you're allowed to end a fight.
Yeah, but even that's scary, because many of the policies in our schools and society won't accept that.
That's the thing, is like, we'll cross that bridge.
I still totally agree.
I want to hear the story. I want to hear both sides, because I would rather him learn to do that. I would rather him like defend himself and then figure it out later and then correct, versus
no, absolutely,
just having a kid that's completely pushed over.
But it's concerning.
Oh yeah,
like it should be kind of cut and dried. Like if it's obvious that it was somebody bullying and somebody attacked your child should be able to hit them back. But that's not the way the rules are written now, which I think sets kids up for. I mean, I think that's one of many, many, many causes of the problems that young people have these days. Is like they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to fight back. They live in a world of weird consequences that aren't necessarily good or bad. It's just.
I want my kids to be critical thinkers. Like, listen, your teacher tells you something, you better do it, but you better understand why you're doing it. Don't do it and just do it because they told you to, but understand why. And then if you still don't understand, like, let's figure it out, because I don't want you to go just.
And by the same token, if you're going to have an opinion or do something, you need to be able to articulate why.
Yeah.
You need to be able to. It's not, and like, I've never told my daughter because I said so.
Yeah.
She's accused me of it, but I've never done it because I feel it's very important to give her a why.
Yeah.
And maybe I might be like, you need to do it right now, and then I'll explain it later. But
yeah, that's what I was going to caveat on.
The explanations do.
Yeah.
She deserves that, and
I tell my boys that, and I'm trying to instill that with my wife with her girls. But like, that's why I said, I'm like, listen, when we're in an emergency situation or it's like something's going on, I'm going to tell you to do this, and you're just going to do it, and then I'll explain it later. Or if I have the time and brain power to explain it in the moment, I'll explain it.
Yeah, if there's enough time, and the bandwidth to.
Yeah, but it's the same concept. But like, and I tell them that, I'm like, listen, you need to, like, I'm explaining that. You need to understand that I will tell you, and you need to know that just do it because I said so, because right now it's an emergency, or we'll have free time and we'll discuss it.
I love that you said critical thinking, because that's absolutely number one of the lessons I'm trying to teach my daughter.
I don't think it's out there much.
Is be a critical thinker, because I think that's really the key to almost everything.
Yeah.
Question. You should be, and if someone tells you you're not allowed to question something, that should be concerning right there. Like and be critical, and be critical of yourself, and like.
It's 50-50, because if we're having a dialogue, even with teachers, I tell Joseph, my oldest, it's 50% your responsibility to be present, paying attention, and knowing what you're doing, and it's their 50% where they have to be present and teaching.
Right.
And if there's a disconnect there, you're allowed to ask questions, and I want you to ask questions. And even now, me in college, my happy old ass, like around a bunch of 18 to 25-year-olds, nobody asked questions. I'm the only one in class that's like, okay, can you expand? Like, I'm not getting what you're saying.
Scary?
Yeah, and well, no, it's everybody's like,
no, I mean, is it
and they
scary
start
to
moving
observe
forward.
that phenomenon? Like, it's like, man, what are you guys gonna do?
It's coming off the like, and I've attributed a lot of the teachers attribute it to coming off the COVID, community or the COVID class, I call it.
It is harder to ask questions over Zoom.
Yeah. But it's still it's now it's they don't, and I know when I was a teenager, I was like, all right, I just want to get through this, and then when I'm done, I'll figure it out
there's
afterwards.
Confidence issues, and
But I want him asking questions. Don't be obstinate. Don't be a jackass to your teacher, and just if you don't understand it, your job is to that's their job.
Right.
So that's where having a dialogue.
Okay, so you graduated in '94.
Yep.
I'm guessing.
Yes.
No, I'm not guessing. I know that.
Good guess.
Because you're at your 30th.
Very accurate. Yep.
High school reunion this weekend. And then I met you in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
2005, 2006. Did you do our spin up?
Yes, I came to yours because I was augmenting you guys.
That's right. I thought I remembered you there. I was trying to remember back because that was my first deployment, and I was brand new to the unit.
Yeah.
And I think you and Dutch had just gotten back from PJ school.
We literally just got back from right out of the kitty.
Yeah. And for the listeners, spin up is the training that a unit will do to get ready to go deploy, which in this case was going to the Horn of Africa to conduct the search and recovery, search and rescue mission for the whole Horn of Africa, which is an amazingly big area.
Yeah, we learned that the hard way.
Oh my gosh.
We got this figured out.
Remember those maps with the rings? And it's just like, oh, that's a lot of flight time.
Bring something to read and bring plenty of snacks.
Yeah.
Drink lots of water. But yeah.
Okay, so before we get into that, because I do want to talk about it, that was my first, like I said, my first deployment, and that and the one right after it were my absolute favorite deployments for reasons. But that's like 11 years between graduating high school and showing up at our unit. And you were augmenting our unit for that deployment.
Yep.
Because you were at Tucson, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So what were you doing after high school?
So graduated in '94. Grades were not amazing. Graduated. And got my first degree. I got an associate's in advertising and design.
Wow.
In Tempe, Arizona. So literally right out of high school, graduated, and then basically Dad was like, all right, you're going to school, you're going to the military, you're going to go do something, standard 18-year-old spiel. And I chose, after all the things that I had kind of gone through and talked to recruiters, and I went to school because I was great at drawing, great at visual, so did that for 2 years. And then right out of the bat, got advertising job after advertising job after advertising job. I was actually, looking back at it now, I was pretty set up for success. But with my demeanor, I was not a sit behind the desk kind of a guy. Yeah. And with the graphic designer, the advertising, very creative, very working in a team, coming up with ideas, very conceptual. But then there was this sitting behind the computer for 12 to 14 hours a day.
It's a lot of desk
working on the advertising. And after 8 years of that, 95, 96, finished in 96 and did advertising until 1999 when I walked up to my dad and said, hey, Dad, I'm going to go be a Navy SEAL. To which he responded over my dead body. Why don't you go check out these things called a PJ? And I said, what the hell's a PJ? And he's like, and growing up on Kirtland, didn't have a clue.
Isn't that funny?
Yes. I was like, I want to leave town. I want to go see the world.
Yeah.
And I came back to Kirtland. Came back to Albuquerque. So yeah, I did that. And the unit that was the 305th at the time, now the 306, I went out, did my pass test, and and then they did what was like, I guess, the first series of like Hell Day, where all the other units, I guess, kind of started like mimicking, because they had a stint of like probably
Sending people to selection to fail.
Yeah. And the only thing that was there was the initial test. And so what they did was they gave us the initial test. They said, okay, that's great. Come back tomorrow, and we're going to give you another test. And what they did was basically an all-day event of just the in-dock course. And so that was we kind of started doing that, and other teams started doing it, because right off the bat, we went from like, we hadn't in 5 or 6 years had anybody pass, and then all of a sudden we had 3 people.
Oh, nice.
Me and 2 other guys were selected out of the 19 that started, and we all passed. And so they're like, all right, they're doing something right, so let's start, not reinvent the wheel, but fix the wheel. And then after that, went to PJ school, or went through the pipeline, graduated in 2005, and then right out of the bat, just, hurricane deploy, TDY, LMNOP.
Gosh, even because I was a support guy in the unit, and even as a support guy, the ops tempo was insane. One year, by June, I had been TDY like 42 times. It was stupid. I was also doing a lot of jump trips, which I shouldn't have even been on, but
we need people
out of the water.
Like,
exactly. They just need bodies. And I didn't mind until I realized that I wasn't really doing my job because I was being gone so much. And I was like, okay, I need to pump the brakes a little.
But that was the thing in the infancy of the squadrons. That was the thing. It was like they had a small team of PJs, and the PJs were doing everything, and they were like, well, this isn't working. And now it's like, okay, well,
they started adding in support people, but even then the balance wasn't quite achieved. Like by the time I retired, it was pretty good. Like AFE was robust enough, the riggers, they were robust enough to support the jump stuff, and and
keep up with keeping up with like the system for what is required.
And so they didn't have the gun guy out running a radio on a jump trip or pulling chutes out of the water or whatever.
And that was one of the
which
things
I didn't mind doing, but at the same time, like I said, at the time I was neglecting my job to do the stuff that was sexy.
But you got to give yourself, like, that was one of the things that I would talk to a lot of the other teams, like I got a lot of flack for it, was because I was like, hey, listen, you got to understand, like, the support, like, we're happy that we just got support, because when I was at the Tucson team, I was the dive guy. But that was just because we had one PJ that was dedicated in
and before I got there was a PJ that was doing all the weapons custodian, all the ammo stuff, like all my job. Like, and
trying to keep up with currencies.
Just skip forward a couple generations, and guys don't know that's what it was like. And so then they're like, well, why aren't you doing more? Why don't you, and so then it becomes, there can be friction. A lot of times that can be mitigated by communication.
Exactly.
Like, oh, what's your job?
Yeah.
Like really, like what do you have to do? Because I don't really know, and that's fine. Like, I didn't expect the PJs to know my job.
No.
Just like I don't know how to jump out of an airplane, and I never intend to.
But there's a reason for that. Like, I want you doing 95% CADM and 5% like all the Gucci stuff or more. Like, as long as all your checks and balances were done, Godspeed.
Exactly.
And because if your checks and balances aren't done, and we're pulling you because you're making our life like better, then that makes sense, but it doesn't help you.
Right.
And in turn, if your section isn't up to code and up to XYZ,
there's gonna be a cascade effect.
And then it starts. So it's,
and for the listeners, CADM is an acronym for Combat Arms Training and Maintenance, which in the Air Force is a kind of a unicorn in the services, because in most other services, the armorers and the firearms instructors are actually from other jobs, and that's like an additional thing they do, maybe from infantry or whatever their job specialty is. Then they also train people how to shoot. The Air Force actually has a whole career field for that, which was really cool. I loved it.
It was smart.
I loved my job, and when I first got to the unit, we had some leaders who really supported developing the support people to their best of their abilities, not pushing them off to the side, but saying, oh, we now have a guy that can do firearms instructor. Let's send him to schools. Let's get him super good at it, because that takes 1 or 2 PJs out of having to run that training.
Right.
Like I loved it.
How you puzzle piece or how you chess piece where you're subject matter expert is best, because if you can take them out of that, and same thing, like, and then you take and teach the next generation of CADM and make them better, smarter, and then you're the subject matter expert for, you know, weapons and gunsmithing and things of that nature. So I'm not, you know, I'll nerd out and do my due diligence, but at the same time, I can come to you and be like, you're the smart person in this area. What am I? Teach me, help me.
Yeah.
And then that was helpful.
Yeah. No, it was the best job I ever had.
Yeah.
Bar none.
You could definitely tell that the squadrons, like, they cherry picked for a reason, because if we have no time for, like, there was not a lot of time for, like, coddling or like, hey, we'll help you out, but we're not going to, like, wipe your ass. You have to do your job, and if you can't do your job, we need somebody to do their job, because we got to do ours, and nobody needs to shoot their toe off. So but
and when it's all going well, when it's all working well, it's amazing. Like, it really, like, the deployments, like, especially my early deployments were just so awesome.
Yeah, the first deployment actually kind of like I mean, it was weird, because everything was like, you had a lot of smart leadership, you had a lot of, like, everybody was like motivated, and like they were there and they wanted to get things done. So it actually kind of jaded me. I was like, oh, this is going to be great.
And then you did medevac.
And then medevac happens, and they're just like, hey, or you get on deployments where they're just guys that are just so saturated or just spent, because they go, pre-deploy, deploy, come home, and they're just like spent, where you're just, and the deployment's a, you know, crapshoot. So it kind of was like set the bar really high for what a deployment could be.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, my first two deployments, because I deployed with you, and then like a month later I went and deployed with the Florida team, and nice. And that was great. Yeah, they were amazing, and they treated me super well. Yeah, and part of that was because I knew where everything was.
Yeah,
like I showed up and they're like, we need to go out to this drop zone. I'm like, I know exactly where that is. I'll drive. Or, you know, we need to do, you know, and
you meshed in quickly, and
it worked out really well, and just had, you know, so those two deployments were fantastic.
And that's key, because that comes from kind of like what you're talking about, is the just communication, and not like,
and empower your people, and utilize your people, because like nothing sucks more than being able to do a job and having someone say, no, we're gonna have this other guy, it's not his job, do your job.
Yeah,
like that's a real bummer.
Or having to babysit somebody like that just doesn't know. There's the learning part where you're like, okay, we're going to show you and we're going to teach you, but then after that, you know, we need you to walk and run and sprint sometimes. And
I had to take initiative and say, you know, hey, I want to be better, you know, and I solicited input. I was like, tell me where I'm deficient, and then help me get better.
Exactly.
Like, help me help you.
Yeah. and that's something that nowadays a lot of kids don't. And I say kids, but like even, you know, military kids that I see coming in, even in different AFSCs, different jobs. The Air Force AFSC code for like jobs is like, one of the motor pool guys is like, I can't get people that actually want to do their job. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, like people come into the military and you get trained on how to do your job. Then you go to your unit and you're supposed to do your job, but then they don't want to do their job.
So where do you think that goes wrong? Like, is it like, do we put all that on the young people, or do we also put it on the training and then the leadership at the units? And I mean, and by that I also mean not just the overall leadership, but the leadership like within that section or within that, you know, like, because I think it's easy to say kids these days, you know?
No, and that's where I'm not. I 100% it.
You know what I mean?
It is kids these days, because
they're a different breed,
each generation, but I use the Air Force, or I use military as a model.
Right.
You came into the military, you volunteered.
Right.
So you're already kind of above the norm.
Mm-hmm.
You went to a school and was successful. So you now know how to do your job. Now you have to do your job.
That's where I like, do they know how to do their job? Like, because the tech schools, I went to a couple different tech schools. My first term I was a medic, and my second, when I went back in, I was security forces, combat arms. and and what the training looked like versus what the job looked like did not align. So that's where I'm saying, you know what I'm saying? So and then also when you get to the unit, and even during the training, there is this concept out there that in the military you have to do what you're told. It's
Agreed.
But that concept's there. But is that the ground truth? The ground truth, I think, is if you're trying to get somebody on board with something, you need to be able to do a sales job. You need to get them on board, or else it's not going to work. You can force people to do stuff, but if they don't buy in, then
no, you're completely right. The you have to do what you're told. That kind of comes in, like I said earlier, the emergency. That's the wartime where I'm giving you an order. We don't have time to chat it out.
Right.
That's your sector of fire. Yeah. Something comes in that direction, you shoot at it. But Sarge, I don't.
Right.
Something comes in that section, you start shooting, and that's where I think which kind of brings me back to like the kids not asking questions.
Right.
But my job is, you've already been taught to we'll say a good solid 75% of your job, because you know that there's going to be more than what you're supposed to. Right. So you come out of tech school with a 75% of the core basic key principles of your job. It's your job to now, do you want to get better? Do you want to promote? Right. Do you want to move on? Do you want to excel? Or, because that's what it is. Those kids that would come in and be like, hey, I want to go. And I'm not talking deployments. I'm like, I want to learn my job. Like you were saying, those are the ones that people pick. You're motivated and you want to learn your job.
And that's
I want you to go to deployment with me. I want you to be in my squadron because you're busting your butt and Snuffy over there is still working on that same line item that he's been working on for the past 6 months.
But I think you and I both know that if sometimes that Snuffy, if you invest time in him, he'll turn out to be an awesome dude.
And that also comes from the leadership.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like maybe do what you're told doesn't work as well with the younger generation because they haven't been raised that way. And so then it's like, okay, I know I don't want to have to sell this to them because
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so really what I need to do is like I say, you need to sell it.
Well, that comes from the leadership needs to identify and understand the different generations and what motivates them, because I know it sounds, I see all these crap reels about like Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y, XYZ, LMNOP. And I'm like, you actually, and it's now kind of coming into like the senior leadership courses that they're just now starting to teach of, okay, if you have a age group this, Gen this, Gen X, this, and there's different teaching skills because they do now understand that, yeah, you're right. So you as a leader need to understand that, and you have to kind of adapt because the military is not one size fits all anymore. It's, we don't have to cater to everybody, but we need to understand how to lead different people. And then when, the bullets start flying, everybody needs to get on the same line. And
I'm not certain it ever was one size fits all. I do think previous generations were able to be more sort of unforgiving and relentless in how they led, but was that as effective as it could have been? Like a lot of
people, that's just what they knew. I think
more people just got cast to the side and fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
Versus,
having leadership that knows
like if you're working toward 100% efficiency,
right?
Then you're going to want to raise everybody's game, not just the guys that are motivated, and then the other ones can get with the program or get out.
Right. But yes, in the olden days, like the leaders only had one way of how to do that.
And
but as it developed,
worked, kind of,
because you had one generation of leadership, one generation of and it was multiple, wars going on, different conflicts, things like that. Now it's you have to be a smarter leader.
Yeah.
You have to be able to identify what each person's motivation is, what their learning style is, stuff like that, where you just read the book, write notes, take the test, you get it. No, now it's a lot more with learning style, and especially with kids that I learned late in life. Like they don't you have to understand how to what their learning style is, what their motivation is, and then kind of adapt get them, like you were saying, on board what your goal is, and say, hey, here's my goal, here's what I need you to do with your expertise and your intentions, initiative, and kind of we need to go to get here, and I need you to help me get there, or us get there.
Right.
Because it's harder now for leaders because they're dealing with.
But I think if they do the work, it's probably going to be super rewarding.
Oh yeah.
Because like today's young people are adaptive in ways that we don't even really understand.
Right.
They can handle concepts and ideas and stuff that we can't even really, we just kind of struggle with. And
yeah.
Like, I don't get that.
Yeah. We've been concrete conceptually, whereas like our communities, like ours are, like you said, like I've said, the critical thinking, like we have to adapt and pivot to meet the needs of whatever it is, because even though we were combat search and rescue, no mission was the same. We had to look at it from a different aspect of how do we solve this problem. Not every problem is solved the same way. And that's how you have to work. You have to look at it with each person. Now, the one thing that I'll like I said, I'll disagree, because your team's only as good as its weakest member. And then that's where you have to identify that person. And we're kind of we're an aggressive community,
and you have to quickly figure out whether or not they can be brought up. I totally understand that, and I understand that the purpose of selections, and I'm talking more in general about the whole force, like the greater force. Like a lot of most of the career fields in the Air Force don't have selection.
No.
You just
sign
as
bad, but they do, but not to the greater degree.
It's selection light. It's certainly, you're not drown proofing and to get into comms.
And I actually think that the leadership non-special forces actually has to work harder, whereas because
once you've made it through, like the selection you went through, once you're through that, that's a huge filter, and so you've shown a lot of the qualities and the favorable factors, and the I am motivated. I am, and so you've kind of, like I said, it's a selection, and and then other career fields, not so much. A lot of people join to go to college, and and then faced with a war, they're like, oh my gosh, that's not what I signed up for. And
I had that exact same thing when the Twin Towers got hit. I got not in in a different schoolhouse. I had people that were like, or kids, I'll say kids, that were just like, oh my God, I signed up to go to school. I don't, and I'm like, I'm sitting there eating in the common room, and I'm just like, what? So, but yeah, it's
so I first joined in '87, and so when the first Gulf War happened, and I worked in the hospital, so not exactly the most gung ho militaristic group in the Air Force, and you should have seen the people when they were getting ready to deploy. Like half of the mobility folks were going directly to or actually half the mobility folks were going to these turnkey hospitals in Europe to set up for a second, like out of theater care, and then the rest of us were scheduled to go directly to Iraq. And then the war ended in like 100 hours. So I personally was really bummed out. I was like, I get to go to war, and then I didn't get to go. But a lot of my peers were exactly like, I didn't sign up for this. It's like, I have horrible news for you. You held your hand up and you said some stuff. And it wasn't I swear to go to college. Like
that's after. You can do that
stuff you said, that check you wrote, they're cashing it now. And that's how it works out.
It's paid in full, and due date is today.
Now they're rolling into a post-war military similar to what was kind of in the 80s. Which has got to be, it's always a weird time. It's usually not healthy.
No. You lose a lot of experience.
Right.
And that's quickly.
So quickly. Like, it's amazing.
And that's where you kind of have the ebb and the flow, and then you lose a lot of that experience because now nothing's going on, everybody's getting out, and so you have the training cycles with, as more and more people, senior leadership, get out, or experienced leadership start to retire or get out, you have a lot. The training is what you fall back on, but there's training and experience. And when you're after the training, you fall on those experienced people. And when those experienced people are gone, then it's
yeah. And if the training isn't being informed by the experience,
right,
it's very easy for the training to go awry.
completely, very much so.
Like, and that's
yeah.
when I first joined the military, the late '80s was probably a real low point for the American military, in terms of capability, motivations,
yeah,
general discipline, and
it's frustrating because I see that now, and that lull, and that, all right, well, we need to get, because you get those experienced people to kind of change, like you're saying, change the training, not to make it more realistic, but to make it more effective realistically. Because I've been to training where people want to just do the blowing things up and the smoke and the chaos, and I'm like, no, you're not teaching anybody. You need to be able to teach somebody. If they can demonstrate the skill, whatever it is, then you increase the stress a little bit, then you increase it a little more and a little more and a little more. And now I see a lot of people, especially like with tactical medicine, they just want to throw explosions and smoke and yell and scream and fire, and that you got people that aren't doing right tactics, right medicine, and that's getting ingrained because you're increasing that stress so much, which is what post-traumatic stress, like, you're basically ingraining bad training. And that's where I have a huge fear for that.
Well, and the unfortunate thing is, in a theoretical world, anything works. So if you're not actually testing
Yeah,
what you're teaching,
this is what I learned.
If it's not being pressure tested,
right,
then like every SWAT raid on a dude that's in a single wide trailer passed out on his couch works, because
not a lot
he
of
will
resistance.
put up no resistance.
Yeah.
Sunday morning, you kick the door in,
Yeah.
he's like unconscious, and you put him in handcuffs. That's going to be effective no matter how you went in there.
Yeah. But
when the guy's awake and possibly trained and motivated, now you've got a problem you haven't even really
or
trained
medicated, and he has
right,
really quick access to high velocity, high capacity, and semi-automatic or even automatic.
And suddenly the model's turned on.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, well, this isn't. Yeah. We didn't train for this. So, okay, well, great. Then you're set up for failure.
So how was selection for you?
I was set up for success. I would say that, because when they put us through, they were like, all right, they kind of like what you were saying, the qualities. So the three of us that went through, they were like, all right, we had to do like a full hell day. Like, we went, it was like the hell day, water confidence, running, calisthenics, mud pit, back to the pool, back to, everything. We did everything all day long, like from like 7 o'clock in the morning until like 7 o'clock at night, of just constant like beatings. And then after that,
and that was before you even went to selection.
Before I even left. And then we had to do an interview. Like, we had to interview with the team, like, because they were like, hey, we're picking you. And then when I went to NDOC, it was hard, still hard. But not so much that I knew what to expect, but more along the lines that they just said, just don't quit. And I was like, all right, well, that's easier said than done, because things are tough. And they're like, well, that's welcome to the career field. Yeah. Things are going to be tough. Like, how do you deal with that? And that's like a lot of this, like, smart ass comments, funny, like, just being able to deal with the suck. And he said, don't, like, a lot of the things that we got as far as like education was like, don't think day to day, think, moment to moment. Excuse me. And that got me through the first part, which was great. We started out with 129 guys, and then through the whole pipeline, we ended up graduating only 13 people. So 2.5 years later, we only had 13 guys. which in those they were like, oh my God, these numbers are like, these are the biggest numbers we've had. And I'm like, sweet jeez. But like for the rest of it, it was good because they would kind of say, they would take us off to the side and be like, all right, well, now you're going to go to jump school. You need to learn how to do this. You need to do this, and kind of like teach us. But they would set us up like, you need to learn. So you need to start reading about
and that
the
was
parachutes.
when the pipeline was super long still.
Oh yeah, it's still like 2.5.
By the time I left, they were getting guys through pretty quick, like basically back to back with all their schools versus we had guys that were at the section in between schools for months.
Yeah. And that was they gave me kind of a accordion of like, you could be anywhere from, like almost a little shy of 2 years to 2.5 years. And, if guys got injured, 3 years, like, and that's, and had to have guys re-enlist before they could even go back and finish the pipeline.
Yeah, it's wild. Guys aren't even through training and they're done with their first term.
Exactly. And that was huge. And so we were kind of successful because we had learned to take initiative and get with the training and education people and make sure that we had our, like, when our next school was, what are the dates, what paperwork. And so that's what they kind of set us up for. Like, we didn't have, the squadron training and education. We had to go bug the wing, and they kind of set us up like, hey, listen, we're not babysitting you. If you want to get through this, you got to figure this out. And so that's where I think a lot of times, kind of going back to what you were saying, a lot of kids don't have that ability to like figure it out and struggle.
Right. And to sort of drive the train themselves.
Yeah.
And I've heard it said, nobody loves you like you. I love that saying. Like it's true. Like, nobody's going to manage your career for you better than you will.
Correct.
Because what's in it for them? What's their, it's not in their interest, or they've got other things going on. Even if they do care, it's not their career. It's not their life.
Yeah. Their job may be to teach you your upgrade, or they teach you these skills, which is what you need to take the initiative to take. But outside of that, they're not going to teach you management skills. They're not going to teach you leadership skills. They're not going to teach you X, Y, Z. That's on you to learn to be a better team member and to be a better team leader. And that was kind of the thing that we kind of took the initiative on. And so we were constantly on the ball of like, what's next? And so, that's why it kind of went faster. But as we got squadron level training and education people, it was all over the place because they're learning their job. They're trying to get you schools. Oh, we have a school date. And then you have the kids, and I say kids, they're like, oh, well, that doesn't work for me. And it was like, okay, well, then the next person's going in your spot.
This is going to kick you back 6 months.
Like, you can go now. And that's where it's hard being Guard and Reserve, active duty. You're at the whim. You're going to the school date, show up or face the man. And whereas with us, it was like we were at the beck and call of Guard Reserve, because when it came down, it was either, all right, you're going. If you can't go, he's going. All right, I'm going. And so it was back to back. But I think a little bit of, they set us up for success because we had shown, we got through the schoolhouse, the first, the weed out phase, and then took the initiative to keep the ball rolling. So they worked with us.
So, and I'm just thinking of this right now. I'm thinking that maybe we at the reserve units were maybe set up a little bit better to deal with some of the issues with the younger generations now, because we were having to deal with everybody's outside lives. And so you were having to not just tell them you're going to this, because they have jobs and families and for us, it was really wild because we were a geographically separated unit. So we had like no local support from the Air Force.
Anything you guys had to do, you had to call over to Tucson to
get or go make friends with the Army, you know, and because we flew on Army helicopters a lot. Which was awesome. I love it because there was a 47 unit near us and out in Pendleton, Oregon.
I remember.
I love that helicopter.
I remember OB like jumping through his hoops to get is like, yep, we're doing this. If you don't show up, you're not, for the love of Pete, Godspeed, getting your jump, pay and all this other stuff. So like, it's like.
But in trying to help, because you had to help the individual members chase their currencies, which probably isn't even an issue in active duty.
No.
But I think that's sort of, like I said, that's almost like practice for dealing with some of the generations now that aren't quite raised to fall in step and say yes or no, sir. And
you have to be a good a good manager in that standpoint, and that's the knowing the person and knowing what their end goals are.
Right.
Because that's the thing of like, if like, because you got student guys going to school, you got guys that are cops, firefighters, XYZ, and you're trying to be like, okay, hey, listen. But that's also with like the yearly planning schedule, like, hey, listen, here's what we got coming.
Yeah.
You need to figure it out. And I think what we did is a disservice to like, as a lot of the squadrons didn't share a lot of the information.
No.
So if somebody had something working really great, nobody shared that across the community. Or if somebody was doing something that was like ancient, like, because when I came from my one squadron to the next, the scheduling system was like something from like a decade old. And I was like, well, why are you doing that? And they're like, well, that's how we've always done it. And I was like, that doesn't compute. And that's where I had a lot of friction of like, well, wait a minute, what about? And they're like, well, that's how we've always done it. I'm like, okay, we're not in Kansas anymore.
That's hard, because it depends on who's telling you.
Exactly.
That's sometimes you just have to say, all right, I'm going to take a deep breath.
Yes, sir, we're going to do that. And that's where it would come into like, all right, well, we're going to do the crayons and the paper part.
When I first got to the unit, we did every UTA, which is unit training assembly, which is the drill weekend for reserves. We did everything twice because of the firefighter schedule. Because there were so many firefighters that were PJs at our squadron. They're like, there was like 3 different schedules for firefighters, and so we had to do, if it was a shooting UTA, I had to do like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Monday, the exact same template.
Really?
Yeah, and it was crazy, and it was just like, and I'm young staff sergeant, like I was like, Roger that, but it seemed really inefficient. And then later, we got some leadership who just told guys to show up.
Yeah.
Like, you have to burn some of your military leave to do military stuff, versus us doing everything on your day off.
Yeah.
And then things got a lot more efficient and better, and
yeah.
But I certainly wasn't like, before I had zero influence or control over that. So I'm just like,
you were doing what you were told,
like,
and trying to make
it seems like we could be doing
the machine work as best as it could.
Yeah.
And then and you got to find that balance between, you don't cater, because then it becomes like, I can't be there on time. Well, you know what, maybe I'll make next one.
Right.
And then it's that.
Or just people leave, and then you're stuck because you don't have enough people. You know, like, because that's the thing. I'm sure a lot of people out there that haven't been in the military don't realize that it's voluntary, and even if your commitment's not up, you can pretty much leave whenever you want.
Yeah, and I mean, yes, it has there's huge ramifications, but I mean, everybody, it's oh, aren't you stuck doing that? And it's like, yes, because I have a lot of benefits and things that are attached, and medical and all these great things. But yeah, technically I could just leave.
Yeah. And if you make the environment undesirable enough, people will.
Yeah.
They'll go to different units, or but whatever the case, then now your manning's down and you're in trouble. And
but it's defining it's not coddling or catering to, but making the process work.
It's a balance.
Balance work. And you're right. It's being able to say, hey, listen, all right, the first end of the year, I know you're busy doing the job, and I know you may have a fire season or something like that, but at the end, I need full commitment.
Right.
These 2 weeks, these 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And you need to come in and you need to be green, which even that like hurts my soul. Like, the whole like, and that's where I think commanders would get wrapped up in drive on everybody needs to be green, yellow's the new red. And like,
well, and the commanders are looking at it from that direction, and then the individual PJs and crows are looking at it from what is got paid attached to it.
I would even say a lot of times, yes, but also in conjunction with like, well, hey, wait a minute, there's current and then there's qualified.
Right.
Like, I am current to do a jump. I have been in school for 2 semesters, and the last time I jumped was a year ago.
Right. How was your proficiency?
Exactly. Like, are you? It's a safety issue, and that's another balancing act of like, hey, we're going to do a saturation trip of shooting, because the last time you picked up the gun was a year ago when you had to do your last qual.
I laugh because I remember talking to sister services and people from active duty units, mostly sister services, and like you're talking to some, I was talking to some Marine Force Recon guys, and they're like, well, what's your what's your spin up look like? I'm like, well, if we're lucky, we get like 5 days of shooting.
Yeah.
If we're lucky.
Yeah.
Otherwise we get like 2 days where guys just get qualled.
Yeah.
And then we show up to war. And the Marines are like, yeah, we did a 30-day shooting package.
Yeah.
Along with a jump trip and
yeah.
like it's just like, oh man.
But then again, you have like they don't have.
No, you guys had an insane amount of different.
And that's tough.
sets.
And I'm like, I would love to be in a Marine aspect from that standpoint,
right.
But at the same time, they don't have to jump and dive and
the tech rescue. And
all
the different aspects. And so absolutely not a hit against.
No, not one bit.
Community.
But it was
just like it made for some awkward conversations.
Oh yeah.
When I'm trying to explain to people, like, you need to understand, some of these guys touch their guns once or twice a year.
Yeah.
And they just like they looked at me like I was insane.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but we try and do the best we can. We try and set them up for success with that 1 week or whatever it is. Like,
but you made magic happen and gold happen, and like the end product was great. But it's they don't understand that because that's their job is basically shooting things.
Right.
Like you're great. I want you out front. Give them a rope or give them an ice sack or give them a scuba tank, and there's going to be an explosion and people are going to be missing fingers, and
and the scuba tank will end up broken.
Lance Corporal is going to be dead, like something. Yeah. But that's where once again comes to the caliber of the people that we hire. And same thing with like our support. You hire the caliber of the people, and we make success, but we make magic out of mud.
Yeah.
And so that's where it's, and yeah.
And like I said, it's pretty cool when it all works together.
Yeah.
Like when everybody's doing their job at a high level.
Yeah.
The PJs, crows, the support people, when everybody's really getting after it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty amazing. And that's, sometimes it's super hard work.
Right.
And then it's like type 2 fun. Like on the back end, you look back and say, wow, that was awesome. And those are the stories people tell over drinks and things.
Yeah.
And remember that time? Remember when that dump truck turned over in the flood in Africa, and and everybody worked together to get you guys onto the helicopters.
And I mean, even like you guys, like everybody would come out and get on the boat and pull chutes.
Yeah,
that was murder because it's like nobody understands that it's a giant sea anchor and
it's freezing cold because you're in Puget Sound.
And support people are like hustling. And they're doing this stuff all for a currency jump or even proficiency or spin, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you guys are busting your ass and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. It's the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I'm freezing. I'm pulling parachutes. This is great. And other people are like, you guys are psychotic. And they're like, no, this is like.
No, it was super cool.
It was great.
Yeah.
And the same thing, like we would be like, oh dude, that was a great shooting. Thank you. I'm so glad that we got to do that. I feel so much better. I feel more confident with my weapon, my secondary, but like doing those things, it was the work.
Yeah.
But just like to backtrack on like the Marine thing you were saying, like that's a different leader that needs to be able to motivate those guys because that's their bread and butter. And it's a different, like that career field goes into that career field because that they want that.
Oh yeah.
And so that's easy to sell. Whereas ours, it's like, okay, well, we need to get leaders to motivate to come in to make the schedule work, to make it jive, and that's where the cohesion, continuity needs to come from both sides. Like I say, the 50-50.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's, it just kind of comes back to that. Like you're right, it's a new paradigm for management because you're dealing with multiple generations, you're dealing with multiple learning types, you're dealing with
it's more in line with the civilian model of management, or good management, I should say. Like there's plenty of bad managers out there, but like if you're a good manager, you have to understand different people are motivated to work in a place. Like if you're running a restaurant, some people are just there to pay the bills.
Right.
Some people are really into that business. Some people, and to be able to recognize that and motivate differently versus stand in front of a group and yell at them.
Yeah. The cookie cutter doesn't work. It's the old days of just yelling at everybody, get in line and motivate. No.
So 21 years as a pararescueman the whole time. I didn't know if you had done a different, because like I said, I saw that gap.
I came in originally as a med tech.
Okay.
I talked to 3 recruiters first recruiter, I was like, hey, I'm going to come in to be a PJ. And he goes, you won't make it. And I was like, all right, I'm talking to somebody else.
Nice.
Second recruiter was, didn't even know what a PJ was. I was like, all right, number 3. Got to him, and he was a reserve recruiter. And he's like, hey, listen, I know what a PJ is. We got to get you set up. Took me all through the flight physical. And during MEPS, and I wasn't even paying attention, during MEPS, my eyesight didn't correct to 20/20. So he's like, hey, just go out and get an outside optometrist. You'll figure it out, and they'll get you to 20/20, and you'll be good. So I submitted the package and to get my flight physical. And I don't honestly remember what was going on at the time, but a lot of stuff was getting, I know this is hard to believe with the military, a lot of stuff was getting like jumbled around and mixed up and messed up. And so my flight package got delayed by like 6 months. So he's like, hey, listen, get into the system. Once you're in the system, and I check these with my dad, and like I'm talking to him because I'm like,
this is what he's telling me.
Yeah, this is what he's telling me. And he's like, yeah, it kind of sounds right, because once you start your day, that's when your time starts, and you're going in there anyway, and it's going to work out for you because you're going to be a medic, and it's going to translate, and you're not going to do anything squirrely. Like, it's not, I wasn't going into like ammunition and wanted to go be a PJ. So it's like, hey, it follows suit. So he was like, yeah, let's do it. So I became a med tech. I went to my first squadron in Riverside, California, and it was a reserve squadron. And I was same thing, doing my upgrade, motivated, knocking off, getting all my stuff level for my 5 level upgrade. Got my 5 level knocked out early, got ALS early, all this stuff. And I told them, I was like, hey, listen, I want to go to IDMT school, which was like the independent duty medical technician, which is like you get your paramedic and you're a specialized medic. And they're like, yeah, that's not for you. And I was like, well, can you explain why? And it comes back to the why. And they're like, well, that's just not what we want you to do. And I was like, okay. And well, who do you want to do it? And they're like, well, we're looking for somebody who will be here more. And I was like, all right. So took a temp AGR tour, did 6 months there, AGR, helped out in every way aspect I could, got done with the AGR tour, and was like, hey, listen, I was in California for 6 months, like living out of a truck, living out of like wherever I could, making it cheap for them. And after that, they were like, well, we still don't think you're ready for IDMT school. And I was the only medic that had all the stuff ready to go. And I said, all right, well, just letting you know, I need to transfer to Tucson because my flight physical came back and I'm good to go. So I'm either going to go to IDMT school or I'm going to go to Tucson to be a PJ. And they're like, yeah, good luck with that. Went down to Tucson, took the test. And they said, yep, we'll take you. Your flight physical's good. When do you want to sign up? And I said, you do the paperwork. And I basically went back to my commander with my, transfer form and was like, hey, I'm going to go be a PJ because I did all the quals and they want to send me. And they're like, oh. And my commander was just kind of like, good guy, but just ambivalent. And so that's what, like you were saying with like, there's good leaders, bad leaders, is he didn't know what was motivating me. Like, he could have kept me on and he would have had a resource because they had an IDMT slot, but they didn't even have anybody that was either qualified or motivated to even do it. And I was motivated. They could have just sent me to get qualified.
That's crazy.
And so I was like, all right, well, I got my EMT out of this National Registry, and off I went and went over to Tucson. And it was actually better for me because I was living in Phoenix, and so it was a 2-hour commute versus a 6 or 7 hour commute. So I was like, all right, this is a no-brainer. And then it
sounds like they did you a favor.
Yeah, they kind of like it. I was going that way anyway, but I kind of was like, well,
because IDMT is a cool job.
Yeah,
but not as cool as
no. And I was leaning towards the medical. Like, that was the sexy part for me. Yeah. That's where I drew towards. And I was even willing to kind of say, hey, I'll stick around longer. Not that I was like, I'm not a bright shiny thing, but it was like, I'm doing stuff making the squadron better. I've excelled past, like,
and it's not like they had somebody already in that spot or primed for that.
Nobody wanted it.
Isn't that
Nobody was
wild?
qualified for it.
Yeah.
I wanted it. And they just didn't. I couldn't. If you could give me a why, I could have processed that. You can tell me no. I'll take no as long as you explain to me why. Then I can wrap my brain around it. If you just tell me no because no, all right, well then that doesn't.
It goes back to what we were talking about with
explain
kids.
it. Yeah, talk to me.
Show your work.
Yeah,
do a little extra and explain it.
But I had surpassed like not one but like two of the classes, because there's like a couple of med techs that were that graduated ahead of me that hadn't even completed their 5 level or even completed their ALS or like
and ALS is Airman Leadership.
Airman Leadership School, yeah. Like so, like the first step in like leadership education.
When people are listening to this, they may not know all the acronyms, so if we fill them in a little bit.
No, that's I completely forget that.
Well, that's my job.
Yeah. And it was great, and you're right. It was a blessing in disguise because it basically catapulted me into, and I was only there for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So it really didn't. I mean, I maybe lost a year and a half from the flight physical process and everything else. So,
but it all counts.
Yeah, and exactly. They stamped my time stamp started, and then went off to PJ school, and 2.5 years later, got done, and then
showed up at Portland.
Year later,
went on our shooting spin up, and
and
then we went to Africa.
Yeah,
which
surprised.
That was wild.
It was fun. That set the bar kind of high for
it. It really did. And
organized.
I kind of would like if I'd had an Afghanistan medevac deployment as my first one.
Yeah.
And I think the rest of them would have seemed better.
Yeah.
The problem was that, especially before the Navy took that base over, and it was still the Marines, that base was awesome.
Yeah.
I loved it. And I loved getting off base and all the training we could do, and going out with you guys when you're doing your diving stuff. And guess who gets to go snorkeling?
Yeah.
I got to go snorkeling while you guys were actually working real training.
Yeah. And then actually had real dive missions and real dive stuff that went on. That was
that was a cool,
boggled my mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was fun. The work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
And we had a limited team, so everybody jumped in. All the support was like, "Yep, we're doing this." Yeah. You had 3 hats. All the motor guy had 3 hats. Everybody had like multiple jobs, and we all worked together to get it going.
Well, on my second deployment, they didn't even have an engine guy, but the radio guy knew how to work on cars, so he was the guy. Like it was awesome.
That's just how it was.
It was a lot of fun.
Adaptability.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I came back from that first deployment and told my wife I thought every teenager in America should go to Africa. Like it was total America appreciation time.
Oh my gosh.
When you see how people are living in a place, especially when you're in the 10th poorest nation in the world, and like seeing the conditions, and they're still happy. They're still smiling. They're still like that speaks a lot to the human spirit.
Yeah.
But it also, I thought it would be really good for, a lot of the people that we know who complain about some pretty silly stuff. Like, hey.
And I think that's where a lot of the military, a lot of the stuff as far as like communication and leadership, that's where we have a different perspective. There's a lot of people that have not done a lot of traveling or dealt with many cultures or dealt with adverse, difficult situations consistently with other cultures and other countries and and they have a very they're set in their ways, or they just don't have a lot of exposure, and it's just kind of like, well, I think we should do this. We have the experience, and that's where a lot of the times I'll take an 18 to 25-year-old knucklehead military guy, and it's just because I know over a civilian with a lot of education, because they have that experience. They have that
a lot of the soft skills too.
Yeah.
Which, when you transitioned out of the military, how did that go for you? Because I can tell you how it went for me.
It was hard. I will be. That was one of the things that I'm working now. So I'm getting my master's in social work because I want to work strictly with vets. It was hard. So you have a tight-knit community, and a lot of people don't understand this. So you have like the military, which is a tight-knit community, and then you have the rescue community, which is an even more tight-knit community. and then you go into the civilian sector.
Well, and you had one more step too. You had all the other PJs and Crows,
Yeah,
which
and-
is a different level because you guys have a shared experience that the rest of us didn't have.
right.
And so
Right.
that's yet another
echelon of
tighter knit.
I can sit here and berate one of the PJs, and we know because that's love. I can't do that with like anybody outside and talk to them.
Well, and I can't really do that either. Like I can complain
Yeah.
about the stuff that affected my job and things, but really, I didn't go through that selection. I didn't, I didn't go through those schools with you guys, and so it puts me in a different place.
Yeah.
Where I just need to be a little bit mindful. And
Yeah.
and I'm not coming from
We all do.
No,
but,
exactly.
But even still, like I'll give you an example. Like so, it's a tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even you read the books of like finding your new tribe, and it's even hard because even in school, I sit in the vet center the whole time because that's my tribe.
Mm-hmm.
They have all kinds of people. I think I'm the only special forces or special warfare. But even still, I know that this is a group of people that I'm not going to worry about their feelings getting hurt, or I'm not going to have to worry about, things that I say being, too, like, I know that when we talk to each other, so now I took over the president for the Student Veterans of America for that unit or for that chapter. It's just it's a placeholder name. We all still do the same stuff.
Yeah.
We still get the job done. We just divvy out the work a little different.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with our community. I now am working with student government, and I'm talking like college, university government. It is a
but that's fun.
It is very dynamic.
Yeah.
And there are things like those soft skills that you're talking about of how to deal with different people. These are kids, and I say these are kids where they haven't even received any kind of structured anything like we've gone through with the military with basic training or tech school, things like that. So I've got 23-year-olds in an undergrad program that I wouldn't task them with holding somebody's purse, and that's different with all of our and that's what you're right in the different echelons of even a veteran, I can at least know that, hey, you've been through.
Anybody that's served, you automatically have a lot more in common.
Right.
Than everybody else.
Or I know that I can rely on you a little bit more and that it's not going to fall apart to some degree. And so that's where it's been hard with like I said, with the thing that I've been working with the veterans is we're trying to get tribe meetings, where we don't want them to be therapy, but we want them to get together and just kind of hang out and talk. And if something comes bubbling up, we talk about it.
Isn't that what the VFW is supposed to be?
The VFW does. The Legion does. But you got to remember,
the VFW has been though that the population at the ones I've been to is very old. It seems like the young people aren't finding.
There is a huge gap,
and we've got a whole lot of veterans of foreign wars right now.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure they're all making it.
No, they're not, and that's we're having a hard time getting veterans to come to and participate and get in. A lot of it's online or it's hybrid where I have to show up 4 or 5 times a month, and then the rest is online, which is great, but that promotes for the isolation. So we're trying to do the tribe events and knowing letting them know that, hey, listen, your group of people are still here. We're just now, instead of doing our jobs, we're doing school. We're still dealing with the same everything.
I really like that you use the term tribe. Why is that?
A tribe looks out for each other, and a tribe will go to the points where it's got its pack leadership, it's got its its hierarchy, but it also has its we'll police our own, or a tribe, not we, but a tribe will police its own, and that's where the same kind of thing is when you have knuckleheads in the military. You have groups of people that are hey, dude, you need to pull your head out of your ass You need to work and get your stuff done, or you're going to get somebody killed. And then that's the same thing that kind of correlates over, like, hey man, like group projects. I mean, I know that sounds superficial, stuff you did in high school. You're like, all right, you have one dude that's doing everything, the one kid that's looking at freaking butterflies, and then one kid that doesn't even know we had an event, a group thing.
He'll show up the last day when you turn it
Yeah,
in.
exactly. They show up at the presentation, read off the slide, and they're like, all right, cool, I got an A, Mr. Hand. And it's accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but at the same time, we take care of each other. So that's what I'm trying to kind of increase and instigate that, because you're right. Like, I've got guys that like the Vietnam era that are like set stuff up for us. And there's a huge gap of our generation of like, you know, Gulf War, Desert Storm, and even now that are just not going to the VFW.
Right.
A lot of the stuff's online and it's accessible, and there's a lot of more information. I'll give that. But there's that community that we're missing, and that's what I'm trying to kind of instill, even at the school level, to kind of say, hey, listen, if you're not getting it somewhere, come here and get it here, because we've all been through something. And we can all kind of connect, and even if nobody says jack and squat, but we all get together and we hang out, like we're trying to do like some sort of activity, like maybe like, you know, drink and paint, or like just fun
Drink and paint.
Yeah,
drinking.
Not drinking paint.
That's a different group.
That's a whole nother therapy session. But yeah, and that's what we're trying to instigate, and that's letting people know that, like, hey, your tribe is here still.
That's cool.
Because
no, I'm very much like the term tribe when you apply it to the veteran community, because I think there's a lot in how, in the modern day, how we go to war,
yeah,
and how we come back from war,
yeah,
that ancient people did way better than us. And the tribes, you know, just even how they reintegrated back into the tribe, and especially working in a special operations unit, the reintegration process was not that robust. A lot of times it was get on a C-17.
Yeah.
And fly straight home, because you have an airplane for all your gear.
Yep.
And so you're not going to spend time at a reintegration center, and you're
Nope.
not going to do anything to get you to bridge the gap between either being at war or just being deployed, because being deployed is such a weird, artificial, made up world.
Yeah.
And then you come home and you're supposed to do regular family stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the you saw Hurt Locker, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay, terrible movie, but it was good and bad. It had its good
conceptually.
A lot of the you know, that's not really how EOD works, but you know, Catherine Bigelow is an amazing director, and certain things, and my absolute favorite scene in that whole movie is when he's in the cereal aisle at the grocery store toward the end, and he's just staring at like 50 different types of cereal.
And can't
even make a decision.
Yep.
You know, and to me, I'm like, you may not have nailed the EOD stuff or some of the war stuff, but man,
yeah,
that's exactly what it's like coming back from a deployment. Yeah. Like, you know, I remember trying to get used to traffic that wasn't a video game, because in Africa the traffic was like a crazy video game.
Oh, it was all over the place.
And here the roads have shoulders and lanes, and people stop.
You don't have goats that jump out in the middle of the street. You don't have moms with 2 kids on their back that like just walk out and expect you to stop. Yeah, that scared the ever living.
It was like a video game driving there, except you only got one life.
Yeah.
But it was wild.
Yeah.
You know, and so then just coming back here, and you know,
speed limit was like kind of a suggestion.
Yeah. Stopping was a suggestion. Yeah. You know, like if you're aggressive enough, you got right away.
Well, like one of the things that I learned with like some of my stuff is that, I mean, look at the time frame that it took in the early wars to like for them to come back. So they would be on a boat or several different planes,
like marching back from war. You've got months to sort of put yourself in a different headspace.
And that's with no type of like treatment. That's just you're on your own.
It was organic though, because they just sort of over that period of months they probably sort of got out of the war mindset and back into the I need to think about my crops next year. I need to,
whatever the case might
I got to go
be.
back to school, or
Yeah.
do I want to go work at the soap factory or the briefcase factory or the
Yeah.
whatever factory?
And even riding a
Now,
ship in World War I, World War II, that's a couple months,
Yeah.
to sort of not be in that
Yeah.
environment.
Some de-escalation of norm, and then processing time, and then you get back home. And whereas now, you're right, like
It's
literally
like we're almost teleported.
Yeah.
It's like,
there would be times where it would take us what, 1 or 2 weeks, depending on how things happen with travel, depending on the stops, and then like everybody was eager to get home, so we figured out a way, like, hey, we're not breaking, we're getting home, we're going to be back within 5 to 7 business days, like,
unless you flew through Germany, in which case the
yeah,
aircraft always breaks.
everything.
Like
It's
I never landed in Germany without something breaking.
Yeah,
in the
whoopsie.
aircraft. And then
But
we had
yeah,
to spend an extra day drinking German beer.
that wasn't horrible.
No, it's
But
not the worst thing.
there was no time, and now with the reintegration, there's like, they have processes for people, and even you got to think about it this way. Back in World War, nobody talked about it.
Right.
Now it's you learned if you talk about it, you lose your job, or you lose your flight status, or you lose your, you stop being a XYZ, fill in the blank. And now they're starting to get into the fact, and like, that post-traumatic stress is not definitive.
Remove the D off the end.
Yeah.
Like that's a huge step.
Yeah.
Huge, because it's a natural process that everybody goes through.
Yeah.
It's
either chronic and it lasts 6, and it's affecting your life, your family, your your work, all the different aspects for like with the DSM for therapy. But like, they're getting it now. They're like, okay, well, we can tell people. I think the next step is like educating the warriors, because it's like, hey, listen, it is unrealistic for me to expect you to do these things without some sort of disconnection, or like, thou shalt not kill. I need you to kill. You're a medic. You have to make everybody survive. That guy died. All of these things. My buddy died. This guy died. All the things that like correlated with that, and they're like, okay, well, it's an unrealistic expectation. Let's teach these guys that if we can nix it or identify it early on, you can. I look at it as like those little twisty ties for the bread, not the little plastic clips, but like the wire,
the metal ones.
Yeah, you twist it together. If you only put one twist, and you can deal with the issue right then and there, it's easy to unwind. But when you've got, like, when I went through some therapy I had a vet, like, who's had like 3 decades to just sit on something. Like, that guy's got a freaking, he's got a bread wire that's like freaking, 30 feet long. That's hard to untwist. But if you can get them at the beginning, when they're coming home, and like, hey, listen, we can work on this, and it doesn't become something chronic. It's something that's,
well, and remove the stigma and make it not a surprise. Tell them what to expect.
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna be like unaffected.
No.
That's such a myth.
Yeah.
But it's such a, like, oh yeah, the guys that can't handle it are just weak. It's like, is anybody really handling it? Like,
there's other stuff.
You're just shoving those emotions and feelings down, and
but it goes with every job, and that's I in like mental health, it's like the pendulum swings, and so now I'm just fearful that it's going to kind of go the other way, because I hear kids, teenagers throwing, "Oh, I got PTSD from that basketball
people
game."
get PTSD from a TV commercial or whatever.
Yeah, there is.
Right.
I get it, but like, let's not throw that word around, because it's like, we need to treat it like, you go in and get, like, we had to get blood drawn every year at a minimum for all of our levels to check that. But how come we don't go in every year? And this is even the civilian world. How come we don't do a mental health screen?
Yeah.
Like, why not? Why? Like, if I taught kids at an early age, how to communicate better, how to deal with stress better, okay, do you think Billy's going to be a better human because he knows how to, like, he knows a little bit of like communication skills, he knows some psychology, like how to deal with stress, be resilient? or he got an A in history. Like, I'm going to take the kid that has these other things that make him a well-rounded person.
Well, I don't know about you when you were going to school, but we did square dancing.
There was
I feel like that was some time we could have learned something.
We could have, yeah.
I've never used square dancing in my adult life.
A lot of stuff gets yanked out. Like we had, like I graduated with wood shop and automotive class, and they
those are actually useful.
They didn't have that after me, and I'm like,
Right.
what are you? Those are things. Yeah, same thing. But like, yes, I think we could do.
But square dancing, I think we could have done away with.
Yeah.
Maybe throw something else in there. Like,
yeah. Don't take away PE. We still need,
they need to get up
run.
and move. Yeah.
And I think they need to reintegrate dodgeball. But yes, there's some things we could do to improve on.
I heard a term recently, like within the last year, post-traumatic growth.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like, how about we still acknowledge the trauma and its effects, but then once again, just change the way we're approaching it.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna be stressed. We're gonna trauma is going to affect us.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of like assuming it's going to be crippling.
Yeah.
If the assumption is we're going to grow from this, then maybe that would be a more functional model.
It is, and not to nerd out on like the whole like I'm going to school, yay me, but like there's a lot of the stuff that I've had to do like research on with papers and get educated on this, and which kind of goes and ties in with the like, okay, you had a traumatic event, cool, tell us, we're gonna deal with this, we're gonna we're not gonna fix you, we're just gonna give you some tools, we're gonna make things so you understand it, because I think it comes down to like the education for the person and the process.
And like you said, the tools.
Yeah.
Giving them the tools, you can't fix it.
Yeah.
Like you can't fix trauma. That's, unless you have a time machine.
It's funny that you say that, because one of the things that drove me crazy was like early on from some of my traumatic events, being a PJ, was that like, the word that I love so much, triggers. I hate that word, but like having gone through all my science classes and my neurophysiologist recently, like understanding how the body works, and like with anatomy and physiology again, how it works, and being able to kind of explain that to somebody that like, hey, your body chemically time-stamped this event and you don't know it, but we need to kind of tease out of you what those things that were going on, because whatever you were smelling, whatever you heard, whatever you saw, whatever you smelled, whatever that was, is going
all
to
now tied into that.
No matter what you do in life, you may be freaking feeling great and doing great, but if you teach them that, you're like, hey, listen, you may be having a great time, but like me, because it was in Afghanistan, it was snowing, snow and cold light me up like a candlestick. I would take the kids, snow tubing, and I was stressed the hell out at snow tubing. We would go to the top.
Were you able to identify why right away, or
no
it
clue?
Took a while?
No clue. Years, and like literally took the, not only like, hey, this is one of your triggers, and here's why, and being able to talk to somebody about it, and not think that we're all a bunch of knuckle dragging morons, but say, hey, just to let you know, what were some of the things that you smelled there, and then like, so the exposure therapy. Oh, okay, cool. We now can kind of tease those out and be like, hey, listen, you need to recognize these things. Don't avoid, but understand, because one of the things was like JP8 and hydraulic fuel. I really didn't understand why I would get all fired up every time I got on an airplane to go visit, going to Disneyland. Why am I stressed the hell out flying to Disneyland? Because of all the smells and things like that. Like, but being able to educate everybody, and then taking that and being able to use that mind, like using that post-traumatic growth to kind of go, okay, you now have more tools, because before it was like a lot of the cognitive-based therapy, like, okay, well, how are you feeling? Yeah, that doesn't work well with our community. You got it, and that's why I think.
Well, we might not even know how we were.
Yeah, I was angry. What else? There's more than just anger. Literally had this social worker show me an entire chart, A to Z, of like 300 different emotions, feelings, and I'm like, the same thing like with the cereal boxes. I'm like, angry.
I only need like 2 of those.
Angry, happy, sad, at one side. Yep, everything else is just mush. But you're right. Having the concept of like post-traumatic growth, you're gonna like, let's work with the person and find out, not only with the therapy and a lot of the other stuff, like with the medications. And this is from my understanding because of the medical background. Like a lot of the things that we get put on are to reduce the symptoms, which is great. But when you reduce the symptoms, you have to deal with the other issues, because if you don't deal with the other issues, you then now have somebody who's on symptom drugs. Like,
well, and what's the, where's the finish line?
yeah,
It's I'm not a I'm not a fan of being on medication just to be on medication. And at my age, at our age, I'm struggling a bit now because like, having various health issues, but I'm doing my best to kind of push back against, hey, let's just give you something for that. I'm like, well, was there a different solution? Can I change my diet? Can I take vitamins?
yes,
Because I read, if you read the label, a lot of side effects.
yes,
and once again, is it going to solve the problem, or is now just, this is my life, I'm on this thing?
right. So think about it this way, and the way I had to look at it, like from two standpoints, like from the stigma of it. So kid breaks his leg. Are you going to tell him to suck it up, or are you going to tell him to go see an orthopedic? You're going to go to the ER, get your bone, get it reset. Hey, you need to come into work tomorrow. I got a broken leg and I'm in the ER and it's 3:00 in the morning. Whatever, suck it up. Really? Do you have a problem? Well, I broke my leg. Okay, really? Really?
We really need you.
Do you really? Do you want? Can you go talk to the chaplain about it? And then the second part, which you kind of hit on, was like, okay, well, you twisted your knee. All right, I could use some Motrin to, do down the swelling, maybe massage, or maybe like, Toradol for like to get right in there and get direct on it for the swelling. But if I'm taking Toradol injections for like 6 months, I'm not dealing with the issue that's going on. And I agree. I'm a supporter of the symptomatic medications. I'm okay with it. I think of it as like breakthrough pain, like breakthrough medications. Yeah. But after you've kind of brought them down to where they can kind of process stuff, then you have to start digging into what that is. And then, which I've gone like with my psychopharm, like being able to, you have to wean them on and wean them off, because a lot of the SSRIs and SNRIs, they mess with you to level out and they mess with you to level off. And there's a lot of stuff that happens with it. And that, you're right. If you're on these things for like years, then you're not dealing with the core issue.
Yeah.
And that comes with early on being able to, post-traumatic growth and being able to identify it early, deal with it early, and then have a short-term and long-term treatment for it. Because everybody's trauma is different.
So tell me about that seems like a good segue into the nonprofit work you're doing.
So one of the things that I'm trying to get going is I still got 2 years. So what me and my wife want to do is work with the PJ Foundation. And we want to do, because they're doing a lot of stuff as far as like retreats and mental health treatment and, getting the guys back to that tribe thing, like get the guys together and go do exercise things, go do things that have meaning, but incorporate therapy. Because you have that generation that were like, I'm good. I'll suck it up. I don't need that. I don't need mental health.
I got alcohol.
Yeah. Or other stuff. Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's where it's frustrating, because it's even going through class, it's hard for me, because like it's very I can comprehend the empathy, but being able to, because that's why I want to work with vets, because I think I've had,
because you're in it too.
Everybody has told me, like all the social workers that have talked to me, they're like, oh my God, yes, like if you don't go work for the VA or if you don't go work with vets, you're a dumbass. And I'm like, oh, I'm already a dumbass, so I'm pretty set myself up for failure.
Well, I think we both are.
Yeah.
But I think you're a really good fit for that. because you are, once again we go back to the shared experience, the
Been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
like you're not coming from a position of not having a clue and
Yeah.
trying to talk to a guy about some really heavy stuff
Right.
that's very specific to going to war, jumping out of airplanes, or dealing with trauma, like physical trauma on other people, and
and the stuff that sticks with you, with like the the neurotransmitters that basically imprint the triggers and the flashbacks and things like that. But like being able to have being able to have a conversation with you and talk to you like a fellow operator or a fellow veteran or fellow, and be like, hey, listen, like I want to know what you're feeling, but I like being able to kind of go, I care, but I'm gonna lay it out for you. We're not just gonna dive into this and just start doing shit. I'm gonna tell you what's happening, because military people like to kind of know what's going on, set you up for success. Yeah, exactly. And we're gonna work through this, and here's the stuck points that you're gonna have, because it's just the normal trend of how the mind works. But if you tell somebody how the triggers are working, or if you tell them, like, set them up along the way and say, hey, listen, these medications may be great, these medications may not. You get to drive the train, I'm just gonna I'm gonna guide you and keep you on the tracks, because this is your decision process, but lay it out for you. And like I have to stop, because I go down a path of like saying, like I cuss a lot, but like keep you from derailing.
This is a safe space.
Yeah, it's a safe space.
You can curse.
Yeah. And that's the thing though, is like in like same thing with like the vet center. I can sit there and be like, God, this is fucking bullshit. What the fuck is wrong with this teacher? Oh my God, the teacher's assistant is a complete moron. I really want to choke him. Like if I said that out in the freaking like main area, they'd be like, I think he's gonna choke him.
Security, yeah.
Half the stuff I did, like they'd be like, we need to call HR, and law enforcement. But like that's where I can have a conversation with you and be like, yeah, that's some. You were in some shit, dude, and you did some really weird, nasty shit, and I want you to know that like I don't care if you believe in God, but like you understand the 10 Commandments in some way, shape, or form of, thou shalt not kill, or the golden rule of do unto others. Right. Do you think that kind of conflicts with that? And you're like, oh yeah, I think that does conflict with it. And like, we're not stupid, but we just don't think about that because we're trained. Okay, well, if I don't do that, Glenn dies. All right, I'm doing that. Okay, well, that completely conflicts with one of my moral or ethical things that I was brought up with. Mm-hmm. And until we can kind of unravel that, like untwisting the bread tie, people are stuck in that, and they stuck in that medication. And so I think that's where taking all these new things and working with vets and getting them back together and being able to untie some of these stuff, like it has huge long-term effects. I'm going to go off on a tangent. Like one of my teachers right now, she's like, oh, I don't believe in ketamine therapy. I believe in mushroom therapy. And I'm like, well, why not? And she's like, it's drugs. And I'm like, well, SSRI is a drug. And she's like, yeah, but it helps people. And I was like, okay, well, they had to test that. They had to go through the process with it. What do you think they're doing now? Yeah. And the cool thing with some of these, and I'm like in it on the infancy of understanding it. But one of the things that I think that's great about it is it those medications remove all of the conscious, so that way you can start working on the unconscious things that your trauma is wrapped around, and having that a controlled environment where you can have somebody there to get rid of all that crap, where you can do one-on-one or two therapists with some of the like some of the ketamine and mushroom therapies. They have two therapists dedicated to a person, and these are people that have had like debilitating trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder for like years, and they're not taking medications, they're not doing ketamine or mushrooms, and they're having it's almost like the key was unlocked because they were able to dive
Yeah.
in and unravel these things. And that's where I think I kind of want to start working, and that's where I'm like and so mine and Danny's is grit,
Mhm.
and because that's what um,
And grit stands for.
um, we keep going back and forth on it because she has one that she wants and I have another, and so that's where we're like, once we get it set in stone, then it's gonna.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I don't want to pin you.
I like gaining resilience and initiating tenacity. She likes growth, resilience, and intentional tenacity. So we're kind of going back and forth, but we're trying to figure out what the therapeutic modalities we want to do that have worked, and I reached out to the PJ Foundation CEO to kind of see what he uses or what they use for their therapy, and reach out to them, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want to just start and keep going and make it bigger, so that way we have more guys getting out, because I think you need guys to do an exit something or other when they get out of the military or when they get back from a deployment, or
even like I said, transitioning back from deployment was literally a flight.
Yeah.
And getting out of the military, especially because I got out right in the middle of COVID. My TAPS was probably like record levels of worse. Like people were just
Zoom
pencil
galore.
whipping stuff over the phone. Not even Zoom.
Really?
Like I'd call somebody and be like, "Hey, I want to do this thing," and they're like, "Okay, I'll go ahead and sign that off for you," without even like nothing got accomplished. Like it was just like it was awful, and I feel like because of my age and sort of life experience being in a reserve unit, I'm probably better equipped than a lot of people to leave the military. It still didn't make it easy.
Yeah.
And then I tried to think about people that had been raised in the military and spent their whole adult life on active duty. And then now if you get booted out that way, and not even booted out, I retired. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't get kicked out. But at the same time, I had like such a low level of support in that transition.
Yeah.
It wasn't cool.
And you're very much right, and I'm not bashing my community in any way, shape, or form. I just think we need to do it better, because
and consider the consequences, like the whole getting home thing.
Yeah.
End of the deployment, everybody wants to get back to their families.
Right.
Reservists want to get back to their jobs, all that stuff, or get back and do some leave and then get back to your job or whatever, and just hurry up and get there.
Yep.
I always wanted to. I didn't like being in transit. I just wanted to be there.
Yeah.
Like I liked being deployed, but then once it was time to go home, I just wanted to get home as quick as possible.
Right.
But what I didn't consider is that the right thing?
Yeah.
And then the entire deployed unit was also not considering that. Everybody just wanted to get home.
Think about this. So family education. Did your family get any kind of education on, so this is what a deployment's going to be like,
right,
and this is what normal is, or this is what the standard is, and then being like, okay, well, dad's going to come home. He's been doing it. Mom and dad's going to come home. They've been doing their thing, and they've been running their ship. You've been running your ship.
Yeah. Your spouse has been doing all your jobs at home as well as theirs.
As much as he or she has tried to set up a seamless process, life happens. Then you come home, and then there's that dynamic of, I'm in charge.
Right? Yeah.
I've had brand new guys that were like, yeah, I don't get it. My wife just wouldn't let me take over. I'm like,
right.
She's been running the ship. She's been taking care of the kids. You come back and you're basically like,
I want to say we got almost zero family education. And Sally didn't, her first experience with the military was with me going back into the Air Force. And so she was pretty new to the whole thing when I started deploying.
Yeah. I'll even give you this, or even education. I talk to people now, they call me all the time. I've got PJs that call me, and I hate to say it like this, but they call me on a regular basis because of the pre and post deployment questionnaires. Hey man, how do I fill this out? How do I fill it out? Excuse me, sorry about that. So I don't lose my job. And I'm like, it's it's a fine line because you need to fill it out because you were exposed to stuff.
Right.
Do you have any problems? No. Do you have some concerns? Do you have issues, things that you're doing? And that's what these like deployment like reintegrations are for, because even if you put it on there, it's not going to disqualify you. You sit and you talk with a therapist or a counselor, and even at the minute, like, hey, no, it didn't bother me now, but I was exposed to this, 2 of those, 1 of these, and oh, by the way, 6 to 18 months later, you go and do it again, and then your pre-deployment is, I'm fine, I'm great. Your post-deployment on your first one was, I'm great, everything's fine. Yes. No, I don't have, no, I don't take drugs. And you're like quick, fast, in a hurry to get back to mom and the babies. And then the next roll around and you're like, yeah, everything's good. Yes. No. And then the post-deployment one for your second one, and you're like, well, that's some like this and this were the same, and now I'm having some frustrating problems with this, but I'm good. Yes. No. Like being able to fill those out, or even just education for both sides to like, hey, mom has, if he shows this and this and this, it doesn't automatically mean he's got post-traumatic stress. Don't go chomping at the bit. But like, you guys need to come together and go see a counselor because you're seeing stuff. And that was a lot of the things that I didn't notice in my second team. It was almost kind of like an afterthought. And then our med director started seeing a lot of this stuff, and he's like, why don't we start doing that? And I'm like, well, why don't we start doing that for everybody? And why don't we go to the teams and start like teaching them? You don't have to be a therapist, but you need to be able to be like, hey, listen, you're about to go do some pretty wicked shit because you're the caliber of person and the support personnel. We've handpicked you. You're going to go do some stuff. We need to arm you with a little bit of education so that way when you get back.
And normalize and make it okay.
Yeah.
Like it's okay to feel some kind of way about these things. And
don't hide it, because that's the stuff that goes down a rabbit hole.
And make it okay to answer those questions. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's it's like telling your doctor how much you drink.
Yeah.
To a week.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
But,
to what? Handles?
But like, then if you say 12 a week, now it's like, well, okay, well, now I need to counsel you on alcoholism. It's like, okay, well, now you're making it not okay for me to be honest. And that's kind of what those are. It's not okay to be honest because you could lose your job. You could come off jump status. You could, like
can't carry a weapon.
Right.
Like you get angry. He got angry. Why did he get angry? He raised his fist to me. Lottenberg. All right, well, you now can't. Yeah, well, did you do anything? No. Well, we need to put you in anger management class. And that's a commander thing. That's great. Gets him out of the weeds. But why don't we do some stuff that actually benefits the guys and gals and
doesn't penalize them for being normal? That's why, like, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's abnormal to be affected by stress. That's literally not how humans work.
That's an oxymoron.
Right.
And that's where we need to like, oh, you broke your leg? Okay, cool. Go see them. I would, and anytime somebody's trying to heal something, I would rather you heal your bone of 6 to 8 weeks off of it. And if you push it, well, you're going to be on, 12 to 24 weeks. Congratulations. And that's the same thing. Like, let's do right by our people.
Yeah.
And you're going to have some longevity.
Yeah, for sure. This is something I've been asking everybody, and kind of you're number 3. Yeah, well, you're actually number 4.
Third time's a charm.
You're actually number 4 because the third interview was a no-go because my audio was garbage from it. So,
oh, cool. I hope this works.
No, this will be great. These things work awesome. But I've been asking everybody, and I kind of want to continue to do it because I like it.
All right.
I like the answers I get. What inspires you?
I don't know, this sounds corny, but like my kids, because I want to teach them the things that, and my parents were amazing, doing the stuff that they did with the freaking feral savage that I was. Like, I want them to I want those boys, like she's got the girls. I'm gonna do what I can with the girls, from the like the standpoint of like they need to see what good and bad it looks
Mm-hmm.
like, but being able to teach them to be men.
Yeah.
And I know that's a very obscure. That's my that inspires me because a lot of times these things like old fashioned stuff is fallen by the wayside.
Yeah.
Tie a tie, sew a button into your shirt, write a thank you letter, being able like being able to hold the door open for a woman, being able to know what a woman's supposed to treat you like, being able to know how you're supposed to treat a woman, talking to people, socializing, work, getting a job, like all those things, like that keeps me going because um and like I said, my parents did amazing job, but a lot of it came when I went into the military because my eyes got wide opened, because I was like, oh, I'm freaking 25, 26 years old, and I'm an advertising guy. I've got it all figured out, and I don't know my elbow from my asshole,
Yeah.
and that's what I don't want them, and I want them to screw up, and I want them to understand what it feels like to screw up
And to be okay with it.
and be able to to be able to rebound from it.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
you don't have to be okay with it. You have to be able to like say, you know what, that sucked. I didn't like it. I'm okay with it, but I need to, you and fix it.
Well,
Not do it again. Yeah,
what I mean by that is to be okay with being wrong and
yeah,
be able to acknowledge, yes, I was wrong.
yeah.
Like that's one of the biggest things, or one of the most important phrases I think somebody can say is "I was wrong."
I teach.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time with my youngest. He says I'm sorry, and I say no. Say I apologize for doing this. Like that gets him to kind of process. Like, don't say you're sorry. There's nothing wrong with you. You're gonna make mistakes for the rest of your life. You
Sure.
just accept that. But like being able to say, I apologize that I stepped on your toe,
Yeah.
or I apologize that I hurt your feelings, or I
Right.
apologize that XYZ, because like that's just gonna make him all the more better. And my older one's getting it, but he's in that teenage years of like he knows everything.
Yeah. Sure.
So, but yeah, that's my motivation.
I think that's a great. That's a great reason. Great motivation, great inspiration. Is kids. I mean, it's having a child completely changed my life. And
Yeah,
people told me it was going to, and I was like, yeah,
yeah,
whatever. And then, and then it happens, and
yeah,
you're just like, oh wow,
yeah,
and especially having a daughter,
yeah.
really made me
Godspeed. I don't
think
know
about a lot
how
of
you're
stuff.
doing
I
that.
really liked, I like Danielle's use of intention, because I really like that word when applied to pretty much anything we do.
Yeah,
Intentional. If we're intentional, I think, that implies being thoughtful and
yeah,
considering and like parenting. I think intentional parenting is better than non-intentional parenting almost no matter what you're doing,
yeah,
even if you're doing something I don't like, that's not my thing in
yeah,
terms of how people parent. If you're doing it intentionally, you're way better than so many people, because so many people just sort of do stuff by default or
yeah.
not without thought. And so I think
I'm having a hard time with it, honestly, with my teenager, because now he's just like, it's just like he's nagging. I'm like, no, I'm actually trying to teach you stuff so that way you're not a jackass when you go out in the world. But that's the age
and we're
appropriate. He's appropriate,
we're getting
yes.
into the teenage years,
Yeah,
and
he's
I think my time of having direct influence is sort of coming to an end. But that doesn't mean that the messaging isn't still important. That doesn't mean the intentional
yeah,
parenting, the role
modeling.
modeling,
Yep.
like everything still matters.
Yeah,
It's just probably going to matter, in more of a delayed fashion. Like she'll get it later,
yeah.
and he'll get it later.
The light bulb will come on.
Yeah,
I see a lot of this
my
stuff
dad
with his
always,
work,
he's
and his
always
work
said this,
ethic.
and
Yeah,
now all of a sudden it's like, wow, it makes sense.
yeah.
So I
The guy, the people at his work, he works at a vineyard out where we're at, and they say the same thing. The managers, I know the managers, and they say stuff, and he's like, oh,
that wasn't just some stuff my dad said.
yeah. And that's where I see the light bulb go on and kind of click. So that's what kind of inspires and motivates me. And kind of moving forward, the other thing is that kind of sets me up is keeps me going is I don't want the same thing that happened to me to happen to the guy behind me.
Mhm.
The VA is getting better with the processes. It's not we're not talking 90 miles an hour, but it's improving.
It's a government bureaucracy, and it's
Yeah,
cosmically overloaded.
yeah,
Like 20 years of constant warfare.
Yeah, it doesn't like just
Yeah.
poof. Okay, cool, we're good. And so that's where I just want and that's why I'm glad I have guys, PJs, that reach out to me and call me, because I don't want them to reinvent the wheel. And I'm like, hey, listen, my situation was unique. Your situation is unique. I'm going to give you the experience and the tools that I've gotten, and then you get to make your own decision with it, because I'm not you and it's not your world. I'm not in your life. And that's what I kind of want. And through like the therapy that we're going to try and do is to be able to kind of get, and at the end, I'm inspired to be like, I want guys to go back to work. My intent is to be, or even like with law enforcement or medics, EMS, like I want people to go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
And if they have to change jobs, fine. If they, but I want that to be their choice and have them to be able to go through some things. And that inspires me, because I don't want the ones that have, they're going to go through the same war they're going to experience the same things out in deployment that we did, but they don't have to experience the shit show that we did.
Right.
And that's motivating me to move forward.
Yeah.
So
no, I think it's super important. NGOs, nonprofits, like that's where a lot of the work's going to get done, because the VA is a government organization and it comes with all the inhibitors
that come in with it,
with any giant bureaucracy that's paid for with your tax dollars, and so I think that's critical. We can't just keep demanding that they do better. How about folks like you step up and do? I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's what and she's the smart one. I'm still learning. So we get into hopefully get into policy and understanding that aspect to kind of make big picture policy, which kind of goes back on what we were saying. Like, we need to get, my happy butt needs to get into the VFW and start lobbying and doing stuff like that for the next generation, because the Vietnam vets set us up for success, and we need to just kind of start setting them up for success. And that's kind of like the big picture of what it is.
That's very cool.
I'll walk around with the old, with my brown VFW cap and shake my cane at people here pretty soon.
Nice.
So,
is there anything you didn't touch on today that you think we should talk about?
No, I think
I know we've covered a lot of ground.
I mean, I'm here like I said, I kind of wanted to make sure that the things that in your questions that were relevant to what you were kind of where you were going down. I think it's awesome what you're doing to kind of bring, you're seeing it from different aspects and different people and different careers and different branches of what they're doing, and how transition actually it can be rough, for guys and gals getting out, because it can even be rough for guys and gals getting out that have no trauma, let alone with trauma. So there's a whole different paradigm out there for
and it
people.
seems like there's a lot of talk from the business world, people, we hire vets and stuff, and then when you actually start applying for jobs with their company, you realize, oh, you hire vets that are exactly qualified for what you're looking for. So cool, but it's not I feel like there's a gap in terms of that, and then actually being able to analyze the soft skills, the stuff that you don't have certificates and degrees and things for, that many military members can bring to an organization. And that's I don't feel like that's been solved yet. They haven't.
Because there's a lot of other stuff that we bring to the table, but that's where it kind of brings, we as the military people need to get smart on how to because even
there's definitely in taking charge of our own destiny. There's definitely a lot to be said. We shouldn't just come out of the military expecting the world to be handed to us. But I do think that a lot of the businesses that I've looked at jobs at, that I've even places that I've put in a resume for and stuff, I don't know that they're capable of even recognizing this person could come with a lot of problem solving skills and a lot of leadership skills and a lot of resilience and work ethic that this college graduate who I'm going to hire instead of them doesn't have that stuff, or hasn't demonstrated that yet. And so, maybe just kind of doing that balancing act a little better than they are.
And I want to make sure that and even with the director at the school that I'm working with, I want to make sure she has contacts or is getting contacts. They're, they put their money where their mouth is, because they're like, oh, we hire vets. And I'm like, that's great. Is this your new thank you for your service, or is this the yeah, we want to work with a program, or like, because I know that there's Amazon has programs where they work with vets to get into that. There's an integration process. Certain organizations, but I want it to be more than just a, it's a hey ho slogan, and it sounds
and
good.
it should be mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
You hire vets because vets bring a lot of value, not you hire vets as a thank you for your service.
Right. Exactly, and that's what I don't want it to be.
Yeah.
And even that's getting kind of antiquated, because it's I've had people ask me. Actually, one of the dean at the school asked me, he's like, well, is it appropriate to say thank you for your service? And I said, yeah, it's appropriate.
I also feel a little weird every time someone says it to me.
Just understand, like, I've had people, it's your tone.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they're like, I'm like, hey, you guys, like, I'll ask, hey, do you guys have military discount? And they're like, oh yeah, yeah, cool, thanks for your service. And I was like, I don't need a pat on the back, but I also don't need, when you say that, that's where I see more like bad things happening, when you're like, just be like, oh, hey, appreciate that, cool, that's it. Oh, that was awesome, cool, okay, thanks. That's it. Like, don't like.
I usually end up thanking them.
Yeah.
When someone says thank you for your service, I'm like, well, thank you for saying that, because I don't really know, like,
Yeah.
because it was a career and a job, and I loved it, and I got a lot of benefit, personal benefit, financial benefit.
Oh yeah.
The medical, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I got a lot out of it.
But that came with the sacrifice.
Right. It did. But, I try and be a little bit balanced and realistic.
Yeah, but
I try not to puff myself up too much.
Right.
Like, oh, I was a vet,
Yeah.
Because there's those, those guys.
Don't get me wrong. I will totally kill my free, Denny's meal. That I will not push that away, because I need some moons over my hammy. But like, just it's being able to like be just grateful.
Well, I think it's awesome what you're doing.
Appreciate that.
I, as a veteran, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to get up to some great stuff.
I hope so.
I know you a little bit. And,
I don't sit still very well.
No, but I just think
I'd love to see the video. Just be like, how much like I want to like start fidgeting.
You got pretty animated at points. No, it's great. It's a bit. I'm loving this conversation.
Yeah.
And I definitely want to thank you for taking time out of your weekend to come sit with me.
Yeah, my pleasure,
and
man.
Hopefully somebody might hear this, and some of what we talked about, some of what you talk about resonates, and maybe inspires them to get the help they need, or inspires them to do some good.
Yes, and yes.
Or inspires a parent to be a little more intentional about how they take care of their kids. Like whatever. Like that's kind of the goal, is because I know, I'm new to the podcasting thing, both on the listening end and on the creating end. But what I discovered was I was hearing stuff that really spoke to me and resonated.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I don't do anything about it, it's just kind of cool to hear, like, oh, that's, I see that in myself. And
that's going to stick with you.
Yeah.
And that's and so I can say the same thing. I appreciate what you're doing, because the more stuff like that, what you're doing, gets the message out, and gets, maybe there is a vet that's out there that's transitioning, be like, oh, wait, I am not alone. Maybe I can go, maybe I ought to swing by the VFW and not just go there just to grab a, drink, but go talk to see, or normalize being abnormal.
Yeah. And propagate kindness.
And be decent human, do unto others. Thanks, brother.
Awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure.